You're listening to Like and Follow podcast, presented by Mobile Digital.
Welcome to Like and Follow, a podcast exploring social media and digital marketing presented by Milk Bar Digital. I'm Ben, and on this episode, we'll be looking at how to make your content work the best for you in what we're calling Content 101. Joining me for this episode, I've got the director of Milk Bar herself, Sam.
Hi.
And we've also got one of our social media coordinators, Katy.
Hello.
So we're talking a lot about how to make your content work best for you. We've done a whole bunch of episodes before on specifics about how social media can work and how we can use that in digital marketing. But I think it would really benefit a lot of our listeners and our viewers to know how to make the content that works the best for their brand. So Sam, I want to ask you first, what sort of content or what sort of steps should we put in before we even start thinking about making the content itself?
So I think the first step for any content marketing strategy, I think, is having really clearly defined objectives. So trying to understand defining what you want your content to achieve for your business or your brand, and letting that sort of guide the decisions you'll make later down the track. Because I mean, at the end of the day, so much content is created and uploaded and shared to social media every day, every minute, every second. There's a lot of content out there. So I think it's just really important to know what your purpose is, and what you're trying to achieve with it.
Do you think that it's worth keeping, say, a list of certain topics or ideas, or what term that we like to use a lot is content pillars, in what sort of helps shape your brand, Katy?
Definitely, yeah. I think it's good to have a plan from the start. I also think it's cool to change it up a bit and stay flexible and not get locked into doing sort of a specific format. But yeah, having sort of set concepts can be really good. And yeah, I guess it just keeps your feed making sense. It keeps it kind of logical and people know what to expect, which I think is nice.
Content pillars are just a really great way to, I guess, start out as well. I think that it can be really overwhelming to think about what content should I be posting or sharing as a brand. So I think it can really help, I guess, narrow it down and create and define that strategy. So I think as a team, we're thinking about content pillars for the brands that we work with. We're usually trying to hit one of three things or multiple of them. So that would be whether the content is educational, entertaining, or inspirational. And I think that's a good way to think about it. And also keeping in mind that your customer doesn't just want to see sales messages all the time. So it's about creating content that sort of aligns with your customers' values and your brand values, and hopefully gives back to your customer as well. Isn't just about jamming sales messages down their throat, sharing product photo after product photo all the time. That's not going to be effective, and no one wants to engage with that in a long-term way either.
What sort of things do you think should shape those content pillars?
I think going back to what Katy just said before, first step would also be looking at what your competitors are doing, and seeing whether there are any gaps you could be filling there. So doing a bit of competitor analysis and industry analysis, and also just doing a bit of audience research. So understanding what is your target market looking for online, whether that's looking at the sort of trends that they're into. So if you're a food brand, for example, what sort of recipes is going to appeal to your particular customer or the life stage that they're at, that could incorporate your products. I just think really putting yourself in the shoes of your customer is probably a good way to start your trying to work out what your content pillars should be.
Yeah, I think research is pretty essential. Just knowing your customers, knowing competitor brands, but also I find it helpful to look at what other brands are doing, but also what they're not doing, because that's often, I don't know, it could be a good indication that it's not a good idea, or it could be sort of a gap that you could fill and the chance to do something pretty unique and set your brand apart from similar brands.
I think also like trends in general, probably like looking
Yeah.
at kind of what's trending online at the moment.
Yeah, like even just what other industries are doing, and if you could potentially bring that into your field and like, yeah, change it up a bit to make it relevant to your industry.
Totally. I feel like there's sometimes you don't need to be creating a brand new dialogue all the time. It's just about it. You can, there are a lot of dialogues out there on the internet already. There's often just really nice ways that your brand can join one that's happening anyway.
Do you think that's an important thing that you really need to sort of think about when you're trying to create content or working out what sort of content you want to do? If those conversations are happening already, do they fit or do they align with what your brand's core message is?
I think, yeah, sometimes I find it hard to, like if I'm coming up with a strategy for a new brand or thinking about content pillars, I find it hard to try and make every idea like groundbreaking and crazy and new and unique. And I don't think that's always necessary. Sometimes it's just a matter of contributing to the conversations or to the trends, but not necessarily in a crazy way. But yeah, just starting with like good content that does align. And yeah, the unique ideas can sort of come and integrate at a later date even.
Katie, do you think it's a good idea for a brand to come out all guns blazing, or do you think looking at the current trends and just sort of adding to already going conversations, and then at a later stage, once you've got your audience built up to a point, do you think that's the best point to sort of introduce the new ideas?
I guess it's kind of hard, and it really depends on the brand and what trends you're looking into. I think, sort of as I just said, I find it easier to maybe start a bit safer and like establish a really good like basis, and then maybe contribute some sort of bolder ideas as you get started. But some brands have a really bold and fun and engaging voice, and it works really well for them to kind of be, I don't know, really bold from the start. And that's really cool. It can often be a bit harder, I find, but yeah, rewarding if you can pull it off.
Now, let's move away from what you can start with. Let's think about the things that impact how your content is shared to an audience. We have a whole bunch of different social media platforms now. Do you think that has an effect, or how that should be thought about when you are creating content?
Definitely. I think that it's even like, I guess when we first started this business and we started working with brands, we would get given a lot of assets from the clients that we worked with that had been built for other purposes. So maybe they were something like a video that had been made for YouTube or for even like a TVC, or they were images that had been shot for maybe a lookbook or a print brochure, and they just wanted to, that's kind of what they would slap on social media. And initially it was all about us sort of pushing back and trying to repurpose that content to be more optimized for, I guess, Facebook and Instagram as platforms. But these days, I think it's taking that even one step further and really, I think, defining what your channel differentiators are from the get-go. So looking at where your audience is, where your content's going to be best received, and then shaping content based on the platform that you're sharing it to. So obviously something like TikTok has got, it's a really specific type of content that should be shared on that platform, and not every, you wouldn't just be sharing any video you make to TikTok. It just wouldn't land well, and it would not even be like the core purpose of that platform. So I think, yeah, really working out, I guess, splitting up even further. So not only have you got your content pillars or your themes, so to speak, that sit under your brand umbrella, but then you've also got, all right, well, how are we going to communicate XYZ content pillar to multiple different channels? Because are we going to be then creating different content for each place?
Is that the idea behind sort of trying to optimize your content to make it work harder for you?
I think so, because I mean, when you think about all of that content, that's a lot of resources and a lot of time to develop things. So you can I guess, be clever about what you're producing to keep it, I guess, cost effective as well. Because if we were custom building content for every single platform for every single client, it wouldn't be affordable for smaller businesses to do. So I think that it's also about, what you just said, Ben, making your content work harder for you.
Are there any sort of tips and tricks, like little workarounds that you can think of to take, say, an Instagram video and make it work on a different platform? Katie, have you run into any of these sort of little workarounds that you can think of?
I guess it's like a matter of thinking sort of mainly of the formats. That can be like a good starting place. So there's definitely some editing tricks that are maybe a bit beyond my wizardry, but definitely like doing split screen kind of video edits can work really good. Say if you had like a landscape video you were using on Facebook and wanted to make it sort of more engaging on an Instagram story, which is like completely flipped around in terms of the format. So yeah, I think a lot of brands will use split screens, maybe more engaging graphics and animations to fill the gaps a bit.
Sort of like if a brand was like to engage like an influencer or something, like maybe it'd be about saying, all right, well, we're going to do a Q&A with an influencer, but let's run that through Instagram stories, get their answers through that platform. But then when we film their responses, let's make sure we're filming it with enough room for it to enough room on the screen so that we can actually rotate it to use traditional YouTube spec as well as a square spec. And then while we're at it, make sure we've covered ourselves for TikTok too, and we get them to do, one of the questions is to do perhaps with what's your favorite dance routine on TikTok right now, and get them to create that for you, so that therefore you're also able to be creating content for TikTok at the same time.
Yeah. So what I'm sort of getting here is that even if you are taking the one video, you've got to think about other ways that that video can be used on different platforms. And I think it's a really good point that you both make, that the idea of one piece of content can work on multiple different platforms, but still be the same at its essence, the same piece of content. How do you think we can use this content and support it through, say, an ad strategy?
The relationship between ads and content, I kind of think of it in both ways, in terms of creating content that works really well for ads. Like we've seen video do really well on ads, like time and time again. It just always delivers good results. So when I'm like planning a shoot for a brand, I'll really think about video and like prioritize video, even if that's just like stop motions or like using animations. So it doesn't necessarily need to be like filmed footage, but yeah, creating content that we know will do well on ads. But then the flip side is using ads to just give our content that extra push. So using things like post engagement campaigns to maximize people who are seeing it, and just making sure that it is getting seen, because yeah, Facebook's algorithms can kind of push organic content down, and it's a shame when we've made some really cool content that it's not getting seen. So yeah, using ads to drive traffic and to get more exposure.
Content and ad strategy, they shouldn't sit isolated. They really should speak to one another, and I think that's something that we've certainly seen a lot of brands encounter in the past that we've worked with, who might have content sitting in one department in their office and ad buying sitting in another one, and they can often accidentally end up in these completely separate silos, whereas actually effective content should be doing a lot of the heavy lifting for your ads anyway. So I think it's really important to support your content with that ad strategy that Katie's talked to already, and using content effectively, I suppose, to feed that marketing funnel. So having certain types of content sitting at the top of the funnel where new client acquisition happens, and then using really effective or more compelling sales messages and content messaging further down the funnel to sort of drive that e-commerce conversion, or the conversion to bring someone in store, or to have them book a spot at your restaurant.
Do you find that certain types of content seem to work better, say at the top? Is it like the flashiest style of content works better at, let's say, the top of a funnel than at the end? Or does it not really have much of a differentiation there?
When you build out your funnel, it's more about going in with like a softer sales message at the top. So starting off your customer journey with, I'll just use this as an example because it's something we do a lot of, but like a really compelling hands and pans recipe video for a food brand, for example, might be a really great first piece of content for a new customer or new potential customer to see, because perhaps they're more excited by the overall recipe or the finished dish as a whole. The fact that it's, you know, something that's on trend right now in the cooking space. Perhaps we're targeting people who've been watching something like MasterChef on TV and they've seen them create something similar or inspired by that. So it's about getting people at the right time there, and then using data that we can pull from that, such as re-engaging anyone who's watched, say, 50%, 75%, or even 100% of that video later with a more defined product message, which would be kind of that slightly harder sell. And then I guess using another message later that might drive them then to the website.
So with that in mind, to drive the people to the places that you need them to go to, does it sort of shape how you start thinking about how you want to create a content schedule?
Well, I guess, like as Sam mentioned, it could be good to start with, for example, a recipe video, or just a video that has a bit of a more subtle product push, I think, just as a good way to introduce someone. So when planning a content shoot, we might make sure we're creating something like that, but then also another video that achieves a bit of a stronger product push. So yeah, having that kind of variety in our content, and in the degree to which it has a sales focus.
Yeah, for example, if you did have, say, like a recipe video as one of the first pieces of content that we might prioritize in, say, the first few months that we work with a new client, and then later, as we've sort of started to build up that side of the library of assets, we might start working more towards creating videos that are more about like the product benefits or the making of them, or perhaps even telling more of the emotive brand story where we could interview the owner or the founder of the business to talk about how they started it or what it means to them to I guess further establish a brand hook. And then the last step might be creating a video where it's talking about it being 20% off in Coles right now, for example.
All right, so we've talked about how we can use this content in different situations. What about actually making the content itself? Do you have any tips and tricks that we can use to create the best content that we can possibly do, Katy?
For me, I find it really helpful to research first, which we touched on before, and to really plan out. And the amount of time I put in before a shoot really makes an impact on how well the shoot goes. There's been times before when I've tried to sort of shoot without a good plan, and it makes it really hard. But if I go in having researched some ideas, and whether that includes like what competitors are doing, what other industries are doing, having a shot list, researching good props, researching the customers, what kind of lifestyle choices they're making, so what would be relevant to them, and having that all like written down and planned out, that really helps. And it's such a good starting place. And I find the content is a lot stronger when I do that.
I also find having big team brainstorms with the wider team can be super helpful. So getting input from everybody else, finding out what's worked in the past as well. And I think that's an important part about content marketing, is also always reflecting on, I mean, this is obviously something that happens once you've been working with a brand for a little while, so you have that prehistoric data to look at, but looking at trends from previous months or from previous campaigns and sort of seeing what performed well, what didn't perform so well, what kind of, it might be as simple as realizing that, say, your top 10 posts on Instagram for the last 3 months have all been super macro photos, and it's interesting to realize that and go, oh, okay, it's not what I expected. And I think that at the end of the day, the numbers and the data doesn't lie. We as marketers often make this mistake of marketing to ourselves, I think, especially as sometimes we would see ourselves as our own target customer. So you constantly end up falling into this space of just creating the stuff that you want to see, or making too many assumptions around what you think is going to perform well. And I think that's the great thing about Facebook A/B testing as well, is that it kind of eliminates those assumptions to an extent and allows the results to speak for themselves. I can't tell you the number of times that we've posted things and thought this is going to go off, and then it for some reason or another maybe doesn't, but another piece of content that maybe I never had really thought would do super well is our highest performing piece, or drives the most sales for that month. So I think it's about, really reflecting on what the numbers are saying.
Do you think that's also maybe a point that sometimes you need to take a step back and listen to what other people want from the brand before just putting it out there yourself? I suppose if you're going to create something that you think is nice, that's cool, but does it really reflect on how other people are seeing the brand? Like, you've lived and breathed this content for X amount of weeks or months, however long you've been working with them. Sometimes it is nice just to get that fresh perspective. I
think that's also why agency life is great, because we have the opportunity to work across multiple brands. We don't get necessarily too bogged down in one. And I think that it helps us take a step back and to take learnings from the other brands that we work with as well, or from trends that we're seeing perform well across the business as a whole. And you don't end up just too stuck in the one mindset or with the assumptions that you develop over time. So I guess what that does is, when you are constantly analyzing your data and making your learnings from that, it really does bring you back to what we started this episode talking about, which is setting your objectives and understanding how you're going to measure success of content. And it kind of, by having those measurable objectives at the beginning, it sort of does force you to sort of work out, I guess, not just what is the best looking video or best looking picture we've made this campaign, but what's actually achieving our business objectives for us.
Well, I think that just about brings us to the end of this episode. Thank you so much for joining us for this episode of Like and Follow. Now, if you're looking to upgrade your online content, or if you're looking for a good place to start, Milk Bar Digital is here to help. You can get in contact with us at hello@milkbardigital.com.au, and remember to like and follow us on all the socials at Milk Bar Digital.